Welcome back to Easy English Talk Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Easy English Talk Podcast. It's so good to have you here with us today. Hey, Priya, how has your day been so far?
Hi, Ryan. My day has been quite good. Thank you for asking. I had a peaceful morning, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. How about you? How has your day been going?
It's been really nice. Thank you. I've been looking forward to this conversation all day. So, to everyone listening or watching right now, we'd love to know where you're joining us from today. Are you listening while commuting, at home, or maybe during a break at work? Please let us know in the comments below.
Yes, and we're also curious to know if our podcast is helping you improve your English and grow as a person. We really value your feedback because it helps us create better content for you. So please share your thoughts with us in the comments.
Today, we are discussing how to learn from mistakes without shame. This is such an important topic because many people feel terrible when they make mistakes, especially when learning English. But the truth is, mistakes are actually a natural and necessary part of learning anything new.
That's absolutely right, Ryan. If you've clicked on this episode, you're probably someone who wants to learn without feeling embarrassed or ashamed every time something goes wrong. And by the end of this conversation, you'll understand exactly how to change your relationship with mistakes and use them to grow faster.
So let's start by talking about why this topic matters so much. Priya, why do you think people feel so much shame when they make mistakes, especially when learning a new language like English?
Well, I think it comes from how we were taught as children. In many schools and families, mistakes were seen as failures or signs of being careless. When a child made a mistake, they were often corrected in front of others or even punished. This created a deep fear of being wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. So people grow up believing that making mistakes means they are not smart or capable. And when they try to learn English as adults, that old fear comes back every time they mispronounce a word or use the wrong grammar.
Exactly. They imagine that others are judging them or laughing at them. This fear becomes so strong that some people stop trying altogether. They avoid speaking English because they're too afraid of making mistakes and feeling embarrassed.
And that's such a sad situation, because the fear of shame actually stops people from learning. The very thing that would help them improve, which is practice and making mistakes, becomes something they avoid completely.
Yes, and there's also a cultural element to this. In some cultures, saving face and maintaining dignity are extremely important. Making a mistake in public can feel like losing respect or disappointing others, so the pressure is even greater.
So we have this cycle where people avoid mistakes, which means they avoid practice, which means they don't improve. And the longer this cycle continues, the more frustrated and stuck they feel. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. And the frustration builds because deep down, they know they need to practice. They want to speak English confidently. But every time they think about trying, that voice in their head says, "What if I make a mistake? What if people think I'm foolish?"
So the real problem isn't the mistakes themselves. The real problem is the shame and fear that people attach to those mistakes. And that's what we need to address if we want to learn effectively.
That's exactly it, Ryan. The mistake is just a moment in time. It's a small error that can be corrected. But the shame is what stays with us and creates long-term damage to our confidence and motivation.
Now, before we talk about solutions, I want to make something very clear to everyone listening. Making mistakes is not a sign of weakness or lack of intelligence. It's actually a sign that you're learning and growing.
Yes, and this is backed by research. Studies in neuroscience show that our brains actually learn more effectively when we make mistakes. When we get something wrong, our brain pays closer attention and works harder to understand the correct way.
So if you think about it, mistakes are like signals that tell your brain, hey, pay attention here. This is something we need to learn better. Without those signals, your brain wouldn't know where to focus its energy.
That's a wonderful way to put it. And if we look at children, they make thousands of mistakes when learning their first language. They say things like, "I go to the park," instead of "I went to the park." But nobody shames them. We correct them gently, and they keep trying.
Exactly. Children don't feel ashamed because the adults around them create a safe environment for learning. And that's exactly what we need to create for ourselves as adult learners. We need to give ourselves permission to be imperfect.
Yes, permission to be imperfect. That's such a powerful idea, because perfectionism is one of the biggest enemies of learning. When we expect ourselves to be perfect from the start, we set ourselves up for disappointment and shame.
So let's talk about the first practical solution for learning from mistakes without shame. The first step is to change how you think about mistakes. Instead of seeing them as failures, start seeing them as valuable feedback.
I love this approach. When you make a mistake, your first thought should be, what can this teach me? Rather than, I'm so stupid for getting this wrong. It's a complete shift in perspective that changes everything.
And this isn't just positive thinking. It's actually true. Every mistake contains information about what you need to improve. If you mispronounce a word, that mistake shows you which sounds you need to practice more. If you use wrong grammar, that mistake shows you which rules you need to understand better.
So mistakes are actually like teachers. They point out exactly where you need to focus your attention and energy. Without mistakes, you would just keep practicing things you already know well and never improve in the areas where you're weak.
That's a great point. So from now on, when you make a mistake, try to ask yourself 3 simple questions. First, what exactly went wrong? Second, why did it go wrong? And third, what can I do differently next time?
These questions move you from feeling bad to taking action. They shift your focus from shame to learning. And when you write down the answers to these questions, you create a clear plan for improvement instead of just feeling terrible.
Now, the second important solution is to create a safe practice environment for yourself. What I mean by this is finding people in situations where you feel comfortable making mistakes without being judged harshly.
This is so important, Ryan. Many language learners try to practice with people who correct them constantly or laugh at their mistakes. This makes them feel terrible and destroys their confidence. Instead, you need to find supportive practice partners.
Yes, look for people who understand that you're learning and who encourage you even when you make mistakes. These could be other language learners, kind native speakers, or even online communities focused on supportive learning.
And if you can't find such people in your immediate environment, there are many online platforms and language exchange apps where people specifically come together to practice and help each other. These spaces are designed to be judgment-free zones.
Another part of creating a safe environment is starting with low-pressure situations. Don't jump into high-stakes conversations right away. Begin with simple, casual conversations where mistakes don't have serious consequences.
For example, you might practice by talking to yourself in English, recording yourself, and listening back. Or you might join a beginner-friendly online group where everyone is at a similar level. These low-pressure situations help you build confidence gradually.
And as you become more comfortable with making mistakes in these safe spaces, you'll naturally develop the courage to handle mistakes in more challenging situations. It's like building a muscle. You start with light weights and gradually increase the difficulty.
Exactly. And during this process, remember that even if someone does judge you or laugh at your mistakes, that's a reflection of their character, not your worth. Kind and mature people understand that everyone is learning something, and they respect the effort.
Now let's talk about the third solution, which is celebrating your mistakes as milestones of progress. This might sound strange at first, but it's actually a very powerful technique.
It does sound unusual, doesn't it? But think about it this way. Every mistake you make means you tried something new or attempted something difficult. That takes courage, and courage deserves to be recognized and celebrated.
So instead of feeling ashamed when you make a mistake, try saying to yourself, "Good job for trying. I'm proud that I stepped out of my comfort zone." This positive self-talk changes how your brain responds to the mistake.
And you can even keep a mistake journal where you write down the mistakes you make and what you learned from them. When you look back at this journal after a few months, you'll see how much progress you've made and how many lessons you've learned.
That's brilliant, because it turns mistakes into visible proof of your learning journey. Each entry in that journal represents a moment where you grew and improved. That's something to be proud of, not ashamed of.
And when you celebrate mistakes this way, you remove the emotional sting from them. They stop being scary or painful. They become normal, expected, and even welcome parts of your learning process.
Now, the fourth solution is to practice self-compassion. This means treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a good friend who made a mistake.
Self-compassion is really about being gentle with yourself. When you make a mistake, instead of harsh self-criticism, you speak to yourself in a supportive and encouraging way. You acknowledge that learning is difficult and that everyone struggles sometimes.
Think about it. If your friend told you they made a mistake while speaking English, would you say, "You're so stupid, you'll never learn this"? Of course not. You would probably say, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes. You'll get it next time."
Exactly. But for some reason, many people are much harsher with themselves than they would ever be with others. They have this critical voice inside their head that attacks them every time something goes wrong.
And that critical voice doesn't help you learn. It just makes you feel bad and damages your confidence. Research shows that self-compassion actually leads to better performance and faster learning than self-criticism.
So the next time you make a mistake, pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and say something kind to yourself like, "I'm doing my best. Learning takes time. This mistake is helping me improve."
You can also remind yourself that making mistakes is a universal human experience. Every single person who has ever learned English, including native speakers when they were children, made countless mistakes. You're not alone in this.
And native speakers still make mistakes all the time. They forget words, use incorrect grammar in casual speech, and mispronounce things. But they don't stop talking because of it. They just keep going, and nobody judges them.
So give yourself the same permission. Allow yourself to be human. Allow yourself to be imperfect. And allow yourself to keep going, even when things don't come out perfectly.
Now let's discuss the fifth solution, which is focusing on communication over perfection. This is especially important for language learners because many people get so worried about perfect grammar and pronunciation that they forget the main goal.
And what's the main goal of learning English? It's to communicate with others, to share ideas, to connect with people, and to express yourself. Perfection is not the goal. Connection and understanding are the real goals.
Absolutely. If someone understands what you're trying to say, even if you made a few grammar mistakes or your accent isn't perfect, you have successfully communicated. That's a win. That's success.
So when you're speaking English, shift your focus from, "Did I say everything perfectly?" to, "Did the other person understand me?" If they understood you, you succeeded. The mistakes along the way are just minor details.
And here's something interesting. When you stop obsessing over perfection and just focus on communicating your message, you actually become more fluent and natural. Your speech flows better because you're not constantly stopping to worry about every little error.
Yes, that hesitation and constant self-correction actually makes you sound less confident and fluent than if you just kept speaking smoothly, even with a few mistakes. Native speakers would rather have a flowing conversation with small errors than a choppy, constantly interrupted one.
So practice speaking with the intention of being understood, not the intention of being perfect. Tell stories, share opinions, ask questions, and engage in real conversations. The mistakes will naturally decrease over time as you practice more.
And when someone corrects you during a conversation, thank them sincerely and move on. Don't dwell on it or apologize repeatedly. Just say, "Oh, thank you for correcting me," and continue with what you were saying.
That shows confidence and maturity. It shows that you're comfortable with learning and that mistakes don't shake you. And when other people see that you're comfortable with corrections, they'll feel more comfortable helping you without worrying about hurting your feelings.
Now let's talk about the sixth solution, which is understanding the difference between making mistakes and being careless. This is important because some people use self-compassion as an excuse not to try their best.
That's a good distinction to make, Ryan. Making mistakes while genuinely trying your best is completely different from being lazy or careless. When you're truly learning, you prepare, you pay attention, you make effort, and you try to apply what you know.
So self-compassion doesn't mean lowering your standards or not caring about improvement. It means being kind to yourself when you're doing your best but still falling short. There's a big difference between those two things.
And actually, when you know you're giving genuine effort, it becomes easier to accept mistakes without shame. You can say to yourself, "I really tried my best here, and I still made this error. That means I need more practice or better understanding, not that I'm a failure."
Exactly. But if you didn't prepare, didn't pay attention, or didn't try at all, then the mistake is a signal to increase your effort, not just accept it and move on. Honest self-assessment is important for real growth.
So be honest with yourself. Ask, did I really try my best here? If yes, be compassionate and learn from the mistake. If no, acknowledge that you need to increase your effort and commitment.
This kind of honest self-reflection, without harsh judgment, is what leads to sustainable, long-term improvement. You're neither too hard on yourself nor too easy on yourself. You're just honest and constructive.
Now, the seventh solution is learning from others' mistakes, not just your own. This is a wonderful way to learn without experiencing the embarrassment or shame firsthand.
That's such a smart approach. When you watch movies, listen to podcasts, or observe conversations, pay attention not just to what people say correctly, but also to how they handle mistakes and corrections.
You'll notice that confident speakers sometimes stumble over words, pause to think, or even correct themselves mid-sentence. But they don't apologize excessively or show shame. They just make the correction and continue smoothly.
You can also join online forums or social media groups for English learners and read about other people's mistakes and experiences. You'll quickly realize that everyone struggles with similar things, which makes you feel less alone.
And when you see someone else make the same mistake you've been making, you'll understand that it's a common learning challenge, not a personal deficiency. This removes a lot of the shame and isolation that learners often feel.
Another benefit of learning from others' mistakes is that you can prepare for common errors before you make them yourself. If you know that many learners confuse certain words or grammar patterns, you can pay extra attention to those areas in your own practice.
So create a habit of observing and learning from everyone around you. Watch how experienced learners handle corrections. Notice how native speakers communicate imperfectly but effectively. All of this becomes valuable learning material.
Now, let's discuss the 8th solution, which is reframing shame as a signal for growth. When you feel shame after a mistake, instead of trying to suppress that feeling, use it as information.
This is really interesting, Ryan. Shame often points to something we deeply care about. If you feel ashamed about a mistake in English, it means you truly care about speaking well. That's actually a positive thing.
Exactly. So when shame comes up, acknowledge it by saying, I feel ashamed because I care about this. My care is good. Now let me use this care to improve rather than to punish myself.
This transforms shame from an enemy into a motivator. Instead of letting shame paralyze you, you let it show you what matters to you and where you want to grow. Then you channel that energy into productive action.
And remember that shame loses its power when you talk about it openly. If you can share with a trusted friend or community that you feel embarrassed about certain mistakes, you'll often find that others feel the same way.
Yes, shame thrives in secrecy and silence. When you bring it into the light by talking about it, you realize that it's not as big or scary as you thought. And you also receive support and encouragement from others who understand.
So don't hide your shame. Don't pretend you never feel it. Instead, acknowledge it, understand what it's telling you, and then consciously choose to respond with learning rather than avoidance.
Now, the 9th solution is setting realistic expectations for yourself. Many people feel shame because their expectations are simply too high for their current level and the time they've invested in learning.
This is so important. If you've been learning English for 3 months and you expect to speak like a native speaker, you're setting yourself up for disappointment and shame. That's not realistic, and it's not fair to yourself.
Learning a language takes time, often years, to reach high proficiency. And during that journey, mistakes are not just common, but necessary. They're proof that you're challenging yourself and trying new things.
So set goals that are challenging but achievable for your current level. Instead of, I want to speak perfectly, try, I want to have a 5-minute conversation where the other person understands my main points. That's realistic and measurable.
And celebrate when you reach those realistic goals. Each small victory builds your confidence and reduces the shame you might feel about not being perfect yet. Progress is what matters, not perfection.
Also remember that everyone's learning journey is different. Some people learn faster because they have more time, better resources, or different backgrounds. Comparing yourself to others is a recipe for shame and frustration.
Yes, comparison really is the thief of joy. Focus on your own progress. Compare yourself today to yourself 3 months ago. That's the only comparison that matters and helps you grow.
Now, let's talk about the 10th solution, which is understanding the role of mistakes in building resilience and confidence. This might seem counterintuitive, but mistakes actually make you stronger over time.
This is so true, Ryan. Every time you make a mistake and survive it, you prove to yourself that mistakes aren't the end of the world. You learn that you can handle imperfection and keep going.
And this builds resilience, which is the ability to bounce back from difficulties. The more mistakes you make and learn from, the less scary they become. You develop a kind of emotional immunity to the fear of being wrong.
Eventually, you reach a point where making a mistake is just a minor inconvenience rather than a devastating event. You think, oops, I made an error. Let me correct it and move on. No drama, no shame, just learning.
And this resilience doesn't just help with English learning. It helps with every area of life. When you're comfortable with making mistakes, you're more willing to try new things, take risks, and step outside your comfort zone.
So in a way, learning to handle mistakes without shame is one of the most valuable life skills you can develop. It opens doors and creates opportunities that would remain closed if you let fear and shame control you.
Now, the 11th solution is practical and very helpful. Create a pre-mistake and post-mistake routine. This means having a clear plan for how you'll respond when mistakes happen, so you're not caught off guard emotionally.
I really like this idea. A pre-mistake routine is something you do before situations where you might make mistakes. This could be taking a few deep breaths, reminding yourself that mistakes are normal, and setting an intention to learn rather than to be perfect.
Yes, and you might also remind yourself of past situations where you made mistakes, but everything turned out fine. This mental preparation reduces anxiety and helps you enter the situation with a calmer, more confident mindset.
Then, for the post-mistake routine, you have a set process for handling mistakes after they happen. First, you pause and acknowledge the mistake without harsh judgment. Then you analyze what happened and what you can learn.
After that, you might write it down in your mistake journal, practice the correct version, and then consciously let go of any negative feelings. You don't carry the shame with you for the rest of the day.
Having these routines takes away the chaos and panic that often comes with mistakes. You know exactly how to respond, which makes mistakes feel manageable and controllable rather than overwhelming.
It's like having a fire drill. You practice what to do so that when a real situation happens, you can respond calmly and effectively instead of panicking. The same principle applies to handling mistakes.
Now, the 12th solution is to seek feedback actively rather than avoiding it. Many people avoid feedback because they're afraid of hearing about their mistakes, but this actually slows down learning significantly.
That's so true. When you actively ask for feedback, you take control of the learning process. You're saying, please tell me what I can improve, instead of hoping that nobody notices your mistakes.
And when you ask for feedback directly, you usually receive it in a much kinder and more constructive way than if it comes as unsolicited correction. People appreciate that you're open to learning, and they respond with helpful, supportive comments.
You might say something like, I'm working on my English pronunciation. If you notice any mistakes, I would really appreciate your feedback. This invitation makes others comfortable helping you and removes the awkwardness from corrections.
Another benefit is that when you seek feedback, you separate yourself from the mistake. The mistake becomes an external thing you're examining together with someone else, rather than an internal flaw that defines you.
So develop relationships with people who can give you honest, constructive feedback. These might be teachers, language partners, or even friends who are native speakers and willing to help you improve.
And when you receive feedback, respond with genuine gratitude. Say thank you, ask clarifying questions if needed, and then work on improving that specific area. This creates a positive cycle where people enjoy helping you because they see you taking their advice seriously.
Now, let's discuss the 13th solution, which is understanding that mistakes are often invisible to others. This is something that many language learners don't realize, but it's incredibly liberating when you do.
This is such an important point. When you make a mistake, it feels huge to you because you're hyper aware of it. But the other person is usually focused on understanding your message, not on analyzing every grammatical detail.
Exactly. Unless your mistake completely changes the meaning of what you're saying, most people won't even notice small errors in grammar or pronunciation. They're listening to understand you, not to judge you.
And even if they do notice, they usually forget about it immediately after the conversation ends. Your mistake doesn't stay in their memory the way it stays in yours. They're busy thinking about their own lives and concerns.
So a lot of the shame we feel is based on imagining that others are paying much more attention to our mistakes than they actually are. In reality, people are generally much less focused on our errors than we think.
This is sometimes called the spotlight effect. We feel like we're under a spotlight and everyone is watching our every move. But in reality, people are mostly focused on themselves and their own concerns.
Understanding this can free you from a lot of unnecessary anxiety and shame. You realize that the harsh judgment you fear is mostly coming from inside your own mind, not from the people around you.
So the next time you make a mistake and feel that surge of shame, remind yourself that the other person probably didn't notice or doesn't care as much as you think. And even if they did notice, they'll forget it soon.
Now, the 14th solution is to practice mistake-making deliberately in safe situations. This might sound strange, but intentionally making mistakes can actually reduce your fear of them.
This is a technique used in therapy for various fears and anxieties. When you deliberately expose yourself to the thing you fear in a controlled way, you learn that it's not as terrible as you imagined, and the fear gradually decreases.
So you might practice by intentionally making small mistakes in low-stakes conversations and observing what happens. Usually you'll find that people either correct you kindly, ignore the mistake, or simply continue the conversation normally.
This teaches your brain that mistakes don't lead to catastrophe. They're just small bumps in the road. And when you've proven this to yourself repeatedly, your unconscious fear of mistakes begins to fade.
You can also practice with a study partner, where you take turns making deliberate mistakes and correcting each other in a supportive way. This creates a playful, pressure-free environment for learning.
The key is to make this practice feel safe and even fun. You're training yourself to stay calm when mistakes happen, and you're proving that mistakes are just neutral events, not disasters.
Now, the 15th and final solution is to remember your why. Why are you learning English? What's your deeper motivation beyond just avoiding mistakes?
This is so powerful, Ryan. When you connect with your deeper purpose, whether it's career advancement, connecting with family, traveling the world, or personal growth, mistakes become tiny details in a much bigger picture.
Exactly. If your goal is to communicate with your future international colleagues, a small grammar mistake during practice is nothing compared to the joy and opportunity of achieving that goal. Keep your eyes on the bigger purpose.
And when you feel ashamed about a mistake, bring yourself back to your why. Ask yourself, is this mistake really worth abandoning my dream of speaking English well? Is this small error worth giving up on my goal?
The answer is always no. No single mistake, or even 100 mistakes, is worth giving up on something that matters to you. Each mistake is just one tiny step on a long journey towards something meaningful.
So write down your why and keep it somewhere visible. When shame and frustration arise, read it and remind yourself that you're on this journey for important reasons. That perspective makes mistakes feel much smaller and more manageable.
And celebrate every step forward, no matter how small. Did you have a conversation in English today? That's amazing. Did you understand a podcast episode? That's wonderful. Did you make a mistake and learn from it? That's excellent progress.
Because at the end of the day, learning English is not about being perfect. It's about being able to communicate, connect, and express yourself. And every mistake you make without giving up brings you closer to that goal.
So, to everyone listening, please remember this. You are not your mistakes. Your mistakes are simply moments in time, small events that provide information and help you grow. They don't define you, and they certainly don't determine your future success.
Be patient with yourself, be kind to yourself, and trust the process. Every person who speaks English fluently today made countless mistakes along the way. You're walking the same path they walked, and you will get there too.
So, let's summarize the key points we've discussed today. First, change how you think about mistakes and see them as valuable feedback rather than failures. Second, create safe practice environments where you feel comfortable making errors.
Third, celebrate your mistakes as milestones of progress. Fourth, practice self-compassion and speak to yourself kindly. Fifth, focus on communication rather than perfection. Sixth, understand the difference between making honest mistakes and being careless.
Seventh, learn from others' mistakes as well as your own. Eighth, reframe shame as a signal for growth. Ninth, set realistic expectations for your current level. 10th, understand that mistakes build resilience and confidence over time.
11th, create pre-mistake and post-mistake routines. 12th, seek feedback actively instead of avoiding it. 13th, remember that mistakes are often invisible to others. 14th, practice making mistakes deliberately in safe situations.
And 15th, always remember your why and keep your bigger purpose in mind. When you apply these solutions consistently, learning English becomes a much more enjoyable and shame-free experience.
We hope this conversation has helped you see mistakes in a completely new light. Remember, mistakes are not the enemy. Fear and shame are the real obstacles, and you have the power to overcome both.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us today. We really appreciate you being here and listening to this important discussion. Your commitment to learning and growth is truly admirable.
If you found this episode helpful, we encourage you to explore other episodes on our Easy English Talk podcast channel. We have many conversations about different aspects of English learning and personal development that might support your journey.
Yes, there's so much valuable content waiting for you. Topics about building confidence, improving pronunciation, expanding vocabulary, and developing better speaking habits. Each episode is designed to help you grow both in English and in life.
So please take some time to browse through our channel and find episodes that resonate with your current needs and interests. We're here to support you every step of the way on your English learning journey.
Thank you once again for being part of our community. Keep learning, keep growing, and most importantly, keep making mistakes without shame. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Take care, everyone, and remember, you're doing great. Keep going.